As bad as we all knew the Biden Autopen scandal was,
it's actually even worse than we thought.
Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida Rumbler, in my home office with another vlog on the Biden Autopen scandal. As bad as we all knew that it was, the details of the story are actually even worse than we initially thought. The report has come out, and Comer is none too happy about it.
But you're saying going forward, you will push for those documents and pardons to be null and void.
Absolutely, and the evidence that we've accumulated, and this is hours and hours and hours of deposition, hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents pertaining to emails and notes and things like that, I believe that's enough evidence to hold up in court. Whether it be the Supreme Court or any court in the land, the evidence is there that there was a cover-up and that there was unauthorized use of the Autopen. That is a huge scandal. I would argue the biggest scandal in American history. And now the damage, some of the damage with respect to holding some of these people accountable. I mean, the president never even gave a statement or an interview as to why he pardoned the entire January 6th committee or why he pardoned Dr. Fauci.
Actually, before we even get into the report, you all know that in his final days in office, Biden was handing out pardons like it was cotton candy to judges who were convicted of cash for kids scandals, to his brother, to his family, to the January 6th committee. And we all knew that Biden was not all there, so to speak, cognitively speaking. And we were asking who the heck was issuing these pardons. Well, now we know. A pen was. From the Washington Compost, citing Autopen use, GOP-led House Oversight Committee calls Biden actions, quote, illegitimate, end quote. Democrats on the committee said the GOP's conclusions about Biden were the result of a, quote, sham investigation, end quote. Oh, you mean like the sham investigation that was the January 6th committee and their sham hearings? Yeah, you want to talk about sham investigations. You are the king of sham investigations. But unfortunately, there are a lot of hard receipts in this investigation, and I will get to the highlights of those receipts. But first, the story from the Washington Compost. You see what I did there? Republicans and Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released dueling reports on Tuesday, drawing conclusions about a probe into President Joe Biden's fitness for duty. Duty. The report, written by the committee's GOP majority, questions the legitimacy of Biden's executive actions and calls on the Justice Department to open an investigation into the Biden administration. Meanwhile, the Democrats' report argues the committee's review revealed no evidence of wrongdoing inside the Biden administration or any proof that Biden was unfit to serve as president. Biden himself is the evidence that he was unfit to serve as president. That debate was evidence that he was unfit to serve as president. Unfortunately, he was already president at the time, but my goodness, when you get into the receipts in this report, it is glorious in its corruption and it is shocking in its brazenness.
Elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
The committee's investigation was spurred by accusations made by President Donald Trump and his Republican allies about Biden's mental fitness. Republicans have charged that Biden's aides covered up a decline in the then president's cognitive ability and that the Biden administration misused the presidential Autopen to issue executive actions without Biden's direct involvement. Democrats have pushed back against these claims. I mean, you can push back against the claims, but there's only so hard you can push back against actual evidence and actual testimony confirming exactly what those accusations were. The committee's Republican majority said Tuesday that it found no record that Biden approved executive actions in several instances, including ones related to presidential pardons. They also said they found Biden's Autopen, a mechanical device that can replicate signatures and that presidents often use to quickly sign documents, may have been used to sign off on actions without his knowledge. The majority did not provide evidence to support these conclusions, writing that its analysis was based on the testimony of more than a dozen Biden aides. In that testimony, senior Biden officials repeatedly stated that Biden approved of each executive action authorized during his administration, that the Autopen was not used incorrectly, and that Biden did not show any signs of being unable to fulfill his presidential duties.
Duty.
Don't you love it? They didn't provide any evidence except for witness testimony. That is called evidence, Washington Compost. But don't take my word for it. Let me just go over some of the highlights of the report. If you haven't read the report, it's 100 pages, but if you go through it quickly, you can get to what you need to get to because a lot of it is very repetitive. From page 3 of the report, the questions Dr. O'Connor refused to answer are notable. Dr. Kevin O'Connor, July 9, 2025. Question: Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health? Dr. O'Connor's answer: on the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter. Question: Dr. O'Connor, did you ever believe the president was unfit to execute his duties as president? Answer: on the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter. And there you have a picture of Dr. O'Connor, deposition of Dr. Kevin O'Connor, physician to President Biden. Now, I am not Nancy Pelosi, and I do not take the position that everyone has the right, the constitutional right, to prove their innocence. That's not how it works. I understand that everybody has the right to plead the fifth if they want to avoid potential self-incrimination, and also in the reliance of advice of counsel. But yeah, in the court of public opinion, I'm going to draw some negative conclusions from the refusal to answer that question, even though I do understand the reason for the refusal to answer the question. Later on, Neera Tanden, who was the staff secretary for President Joe Biden, had this to say. Tanden assured the committee that she reviewed the decision materials when they were returned to her. However, Tanden admitted that she knew nothing about what happened between the time she gave them to the Oval Office operations team and when the materials came back with the president's signature. Neera Tanden, June 24, 2025. So from the time that the decision book, the decision memo, the decision card leaves you and then comes back to you, it was a bit of a black box. You're not involved in the middle portions very often when the president is reviewing the book, reviewing the card, reviewing the memo. Answer: no, but I looked at each memo that I received back to ensure that it had the president's signature. Since Tanden had no visibility into this critical part of the process, it is impossible for her to verify that President Biden himself understood, approved, and physically signed each decision. Lower down, another vulnerability in the decision process was the procedure for ensuring that the decision materials were reviewed, fully understood, and signed by the cognitively impaired president himself. The Biden White House's executive decision-making procedure were so lax that the chain of custody for a given decision is difficult or impossible to establish. Documents that were used to predicate executive actions should be sufficiently traceable to ensure they reflect the will of the president. Instead, the Biden White House's flimsy procedure appears to have been extremely vulnerable to abuse. Now, to steelman this for you, because a lot of you out there should be saying this, I'm saying it myself. Joe Biden, whether you like it or not, was the president. He was not removed from office under the 25th Amendment, and so the fact that he even initialed off on everything is itself enough of proof that he knew what he was signing. The only problem is they were all admitting and had admitted in this report that they were hiding the president's cognitive decline for political reasons. Going back to the intro executive summary of the report, Dr. O'Connor, who had business dealings with and financial connections to President Biden's family, is not the only participant in this scheme with an incentive to cover up the truth. Mike Donnellan, senior advisor to President Biden, was responsible for getting accurate polling data to the president. Donnellan told the committee that he stood to make a total of $8 million by keeping President Biden in the presidential race and getting him reelected. The committee has found that these incentives, among others, motivated the inner circle to conceal the president's decline while running the government in his stead. Anita Dunn, a longtime political operative and Biden aide who served as a senior advisor to the former president, told the committee that the former president's senior advisors reached a consensus that President Biden should not undergo a cognitive exam despite persistent calls from the public to do so. This revelation that the president's political advisors interfered with his health care to fuel a cover-up of his condition was corroborated by President Biden's second chief of staff, Jeff Zients. You have admissions from members of Biden's staff that they were keeping him from undergoing cognitive exams because they didn't want him to, because they knew it would be harmful, from the very people who stood to make millions by keeping that demented old man in the race until they could no longer hide his cognitive decline. So you have a president that is cognitively incapable of being president to the knowledge of his inner circle. They want to keep him from doing cognitive exams so that it becomes disclosed to the world because they stood to lose money. And what the heck was going on with the Autopen in the meantime? Who the hell knows? Back to the report, page 75, Jeff Zients, September 18, 2025. Question: do you know who the people who were actually, people or person, who actually operated the Autopen were? Answer: I do not. Tanden and her staff were also responsible for tracking and logging the decision materials and ensuring that all documents that needed the president's signature had a signature. Tandon's office did not track whether the documents were signed by Autopen or by hand signature. That is the overview of the essentials of this report. It's very damning, but it's nothing that we didn't all already know. And I have been steelmanning this from the other side. You do not want to open the door to the other party wielding the levers of power to determine when the president authorized something or when he didn't, based on his cognitive decline or the allegations of his cognitive decline, because Lord knows they've already done it. They're going to accuse Donald Trump of being cognitively impaired, such that all of his executive actions, all of his pardons prior to him leaving office are therefore null and void. They're going to try to do the exact same thing that the GOP are trying to do with Biden's Autopen. The only difference is these circumstances are totally different. Setting aside Biden's cognitive decline, which was clear for the world to see, this Autopen was seemingly operating totally automatedly without the president's knowledge. Nobody even knew what the heck was going on. All that I've got to say is a lot of people probably made a lot of money signing off with that Autopen unbeknownst to Joe Biden. Anyhow, I see a kid is coming here, so I might have to end this vlog. Yes? Yes, I'll get your baseball stuff in a second. That is the vlog. If you like what I do, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, but most importantly, exercise, eat healthy. You're going to tell them to like and share and subscribe?
Like, share, and subscribe.
That's right. Now you have to do it. All right, get out there, exercise. Now you know your vlog. Peace out. Boom!